Listen, I won't beat around the bush, folks. You're not here to hear me talk. You're here for our next guest. Please put your hands together for the BAFTA-nominated Ryan Hurst.
Yes, yes, it is he, it is I. I'm walking, they are watching me walking. I'm a professional walker.
There you are. Well, how's it going?
It's going beautiful. It's going How are you all doing? All right, I'm mildly comatose audience. Fantastic. I'll leave you permanently comatose.
They're all just very polite.
Yeah.
So how have you been finding Ireland so far?
Rainy, cold, then a little sunny, then snow for no reason.
Well, as I was saying to
I
Matt,
like it. It's kind of, well, we live on a very bipolar planet to begin with, so it's a par for the course.
I was actually saying that to Matt Lynn, so it's like, you've literally come at a time when it is the ideal Irish experience because we can get all 4 seasons in one day, and that is just a common thing in Ireland.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, as I said in the intro, you are now a BAFTA-nominated actor.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
God of War has been an absolutely massive success, and there's been so much praise heaped on you for your performance as Thor. So have you been surprised by hearing how well it's gone, or were you kind of just like, yeah, this is going to be the bomb?
No, I had no idea, to be totally honest. I mean, the creators of the show, right before COVID hit, like just as it was hitting, they approached me and they came over to my house and pitched me, the whole sort of storyline, and were showing the artwork, which I thought was phenomenal, and what the character was going to look like. And then, but like, when you're shooting it, because of the way that you shoot a video game, it's not like you get like a full script. So you just shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot. But the cast of the video game was so large that I didn't know, how large of a character Thor was actually in the game. And then when they started doing the marketing for it, they were like, you're like one of the main characters, right? And I was like, what? And I was like, but there's like 50 people in this game. And they're like, no, but you're like the guy. And I was like, oh, cool. And then, and I was just happy to see with all the marketing too, when you buy the God of War set, that comes with Mjolnir and the hammer and all that stuff. So I'm really happy the way that it turned out. And it was a great learning experience for me as an actor to do motion capture and the voice at the same time. Was fun.
That was what I was going to ask you, because I remember speaking to a few people who've worked in motion capture before, and they've kind of likened it more so to kind of working in theatre and rehearsing in a theatre space, because you literally have no props, nothing else going on. It's literally just yourself. So I was going to say, you're nodding to say agreement. So I'm assuming you're agreeing with that statement.
Yeah. For me, it was a little bit different too, because that Thor's character, he was supposed to be bigger than everybody else. So it's difficult to describe, but you're in this space with these cameras that are sort of floating around. But then up above, they have sort of a live feed, very rough animation of you. So my character was supposed to be, over 7 feet tall, but I'm shooting a scene with somebody who's, 6 feet tall or something like that. So I'd kind of have to watch myself as this larger version with a smaller character, and it was a bit more like operating a marionette than it was just acting. So that part was an interesting learning curve. But I had a blast doing it though. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
And acting is something that actually runs in your blood, because both of your parents your mum was an acting coach, I believe, and your father was in the Dukes of Hazzard. Yeah. So was this always the plan for you, or did you sort of think maybe you were going to, break the tradition?
It was always sort of in the cards. I mean, I wanted to be. I started off in comedy, whether you believe it or not. That's sort of where I started. But yeah, Dad was an actor, Mom was an acting coach, and I had a phenomenal acting professor throughout my childhood growing up, who was a professor at USC Drama School, which is one of the best drama schools in the United States, who taught me an encyclopedia of knowledge at a very, very early age. But yeah, it was always something that I felt like I could do pretty well, and that that the parts that I gravitated towards the most were sort of more complex, interesting. They were characters or performances that I felt like I could offer something unique.
And I think you've just literally led into my next question, because I think you had something very unique in a couple of roles very early on in your career where you actually got to star alongside some Hollywood icons. We've got Denzel Washington, Tom Hanks, Robin Williams. Mm-hmm. What things did you take from working alongside them? Because they were already like well into their careers at this point. So were there any observations that you made from each of them?
I'll tell you one of the stories that I like the most, which is, first of all, Tom Hanks is a gorgeous human being. Is everything that you think about Tom Hanks is correct. He's exactly that. But also, you know, when you're studying to be an actor, they have you do these kind of exercises to, you know, get rid of the nerves that you might have, and they're all really silly. You know, you a lot of the times you'll hear actors going like red leather, red leather, yellow, you know, is doing all these sort of silly voice exercises that even as you're doing it, you know, you always feel like an idiot while you're doing it. And I remember one of the first days that I was working with Tom on Lady Killers. I look over, and he's doing all of them. And I look over at him, and he says, "Yeah, I do all that stupid shit too." And I said, "Yeah, okay, all right." And then also just these little sort of like tricks of the trade or experiences that all actors have that you feel like are only happening to you. Like one of the things that happens as an actor a lot of the time is when you're shooting a scene is, you know, I mean, they can only cover one side of the scene, so the camera's pointed at one actor and then it's at another, and then sometimes it's a 2-shot or a 3-shot or a wide shot. But inevitably what always happens is when the camera's not on you, it's your best performance. And then they turn the camera around onto you and you feel like you suck. And the same thing happened again with Tom Hanks. Is we were doing a scene and he had this long monologue. He had this long monologue with all this sort of this really antiquated vernacular to it, and he wanted it to be very sing-songy and to flow. And it was our coverage first, that we were shooting all of our stuff, and he just nailed it, and it turned around onto him, and he could not get it. And he looked over at me and he said, "Don't you just freaking hate that? When they turn it around onto you, you just can't find the cards." And I said, "I know, man, I know."
When you guys did Lady Killers together, did he remember you from working on Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah, very sweet.
Because that scene when it's, of course, like you come in and you can't hear, the comedic beats in that are just so perfect. Did you workshop that beforehand, or was that just it? You just did it.
No,
and it worked?
I knew it. I read the script and I was like, they wanted me to audition for all of these different roles, and I wasn't really interested. I felt like that there were other actors out there who could do a better job, but I was like, I looked at this one tiny thing and I said, first of all, it's the only really funny scene in the movie, and two, it's the guy who tells them where Private Ryan is. I was like, let me take that one. Like, I want to audition for that, and my agent was like, they're offering, you know, they want you to audition for a larger role, and I was like, yeah, there's great people for that. I was like, I'll be the funny guy who comes in and tells them where they're going. I was like, that'll be fun. So yeah, and it was a beautiful experience. I auditioned on a Tuesday, and they called me later that afternoon and said, you know, can you get on a plane today? Got on a plane, flew over to just outside of London to Pinewood Studios, and they took me straight from the airport to the set. Put me in my stuff and ran me out, and I did my scene, and it was so sweet. It was like I got there and you know, there's 2,500 background actors, and Steven Spielberg says to me like, "Hey, you want to go have lunch?" And I said, "Yeah." So we went there and had lunch, and because I'm a cinephile, I'm just like sort of a movie nerd as he is also, infamously, and we sat there and just chatted and nerded it up about movies. And then after lunch, he said, well, you know, we're going to finish up your scene, and then what about after that? And I said, I don't know. I think I'm supposed to be here for like 10 days. And he said, well, why don't you come back? So then for the next 9 days, it was, you know, behind the monitor in Video Village was Steven Spielberg, the script supervisor, and me, and I would just sit there and watch, you know, a maestro at work for 10 days and just sort of absorb, you know, how he directs and what he sort of prioritizes as a director and how fast he was. You know, it was just it was a summer school for me, just hanging out with him.
Yeah, like he is known as being like one of the best in the business of all time for a reason.
Yeah.
And another person who's known for being one of the best, of course, is the late Robin Williams. And the group therapy scene in Patch Adams.
Yeah.
He is just like a mile a minute going with those jokes. And I'm assuming there must have been a lot more ad-libs during that sequence because he is notorious for ad-libs.
Oh, yeah. Well, that is so when I was probably 7 years old, I had it in my mind that I wanted to become a stand-up comedian. And I remember back in the day when you could buy the VHS tapes or the beta tapes, and you know, that you could basically only rent them, but if you wanted to buy a VHS tape of something, it cost like $350 in the United States to be able to actually buy it. And so I remember saving up for almost a year and buying the VHS of Robin Williams at the Metropolitan Opera House. And I would watch it over and over and over and over. I knew it from start to finish. I knew every breath of that, of his performance. And he was essentially my idol. Everything from, you know, Mork and Mindy to Popeye to you know, all of his sort of early work was, I was just sort of enamored with him. And then you know, it was like one of the second or third movies that I ever did, and I got to just sit there and improvise with him. A lot of the stuff was cut from the movie. It was about 3 weeks that we were shooting. It was him and I, Alan Tudyk, and a few other actors, and we would just, you know, we would have a basic outline of the scene, but then it was just me improvising, you know, with Robin Williams. And it was still to this day is one of, you know, the kind of like what I consider the crown jewels of my career. It was just an absolutely beautiful experience. And I remember when I first met him, I introduced myself and I said, "Mr. Williams, I'm Ryan. I'm going to be, you know, playing this character alongside of you." And I said, "I just need to tell you," I said, the 7-year-old version of Ryan Hurst was not out on his bike or sitting there, you know, having sleepovers with his friends. He was watching Robin Williams at the Metropolitan Opera House and memorizing every single syllable of it. And he grabs my hand, and I still remember this, it makes me cry a little bit. He grabs my hand and pulls it to his chest, and he puts my hand on his chest, and he says, "What you just said," he said, "that will get me through today. That will get me through today." And then he kind of like squeezed my hand and walked away. And it was just, it's one of those things, you know, is sometimes when you meet the people that you idolize, it can be a really rough introduction, and sometimes, mwah. So,
oh, that's so lovely.
Yeah.
And you ended up going sort of from comedy into the more serious roles. So what was the one that made you kind of think, it's like, oh, maybe I'll start dipping more of a toe into these ones?
To be totally honest, is drama or action is a hell of a lot easier than comedy. It's because with drama, you know, it's easier to massage bad material. You know what I mean? And then that's sort of where you earn your money, so to speak. Is if you get a scene that's, you know, bronze and you want to make it into gold, there's a little bit of alchemy that needs to take place. So, but with comedy, you know, it's kind of it's more of an objective experience, which is you got to make people laugh. It's got to be funny. And sometimes when something's written a certain way and you don't think it's funny, the sort of workload that goes into making it funny can be a lot of work. So that's kind of where I transitioned. But that, and then also just luck of the draw that there was a lot of things that came my way that seemed to be more sort of drama oriented. So I just have been doing that for a while.
Well, there's two roles that I think a lot of people are probably going to be wanting to ask you questions about. But before I open up to the floor, we do have to touch on The Walking Dead and Sons of Anarchy.
Okay.
So, Sons of Anarchy, Opie. was hands down, I think, a lot of people's favorite character in the series. What do you think it was, aside from being portrayed by you, that made people really and truly love him?
I think it was that people gravitate or just have a certain amount of pathos towards characters who are the strong, silent type. And that was always kind of something that I was decided that I wanted the character to be. I remember I was watching Good Will Hunting, and I saw, that there was Ben Affleck, there was Matt Damon, there was Casey Affleck, and then always in every scene was Cole Hauser, sort of a redheaded fella, and I was always, and he barely said anything in the movie, and then I remember talking with Cole years later, and also with Ben Affleck, and saying like, why was Cole even in the movie? He didn't have any lines. And he said, we wrote him all these lines, and he gave all of the lines to Casey. And I asked him why he did that. He said, because when there's 4 or 5 guys together, there's always one guy who doesn't say anything, but he's a presence. And I was like, that's what I wanted to present, is when there's a strong silent type, it allows the audience some room to project their own experience onto what's happening. And I really have always, is that this is a motion picture, this is a visual medium. It's not necessarily always an auditory medium. So when you can just hold, a shot on somebody and they're thinking something or going through something, it pulls the audience in. And I've always really, and I think that on a lot of levels is a way for an audience member to feel more engaged in the character, instead of them going like, here is what I'm feeling all the time about what's happening. Is that if you just let those moments breathe, if you let them play a little bit, that the audience seems to connect with those characters more. So I've always liked that aspect of Opie.
We've been very fortunate here at Dublin Comic Con to have both Peter Weller and Ron Perlman join us. And they actually both described the set as quite a macho set. So would you, I was going to say, would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, look, you get 9 guys together who and a bunch of motorcycles. It's going to be a lot of testosterone. But we all got along brilliantly. But it was a very different shoot. It's kind of like if anybody has ever watched the making of Apocalypse Now, and like it's called the Heart of Darkness, where there was just always this tinge of like, is somebody gonna die today? Like, it was just a very volatile, charged set all of the time. Which by the end of 5 years, they were like, oh, did you want to leave the show? I was like, well, I didn't not want to leave. It was rough on the nervous system, I'll tell you that much.
Oh, I'd say so. And like, there's a great outtake that I've seen, and it's yourself and Charlie are in this action sequence, and then whatever way the things happened, Charlie just ends up sitting on your knee, and the two of you just look at each other and be like, hi. It did actually just seem like, as much as it probably was a tough shoot at times, that you did all just really get along. And I think that was shown as well with how they honored you when you were finished. No, it was very, very quick. That I remember it was probably the first or second episode when we were all sort of sitting around the table, and it was all of us in one scene. And I just remember kind of taking this mental snapshot. It must have been the first episode because the show hadn't come out yet. But I remember just looking around, and I've been in this business for 30 years now, and kind of looking at all these really powerful sort of journeyman character actors who I'd admired, I loved Kim's performance in Waterworld. I've been watching Mark Boone Jr. in everything forever. I mean, the guy has 400, credits to his name on IMDb, and I love him in every single one of them. And I just remember looking around the table and going like, whoa, this is kind of lightning in a bottle. Like, there's something going on here. I don't know what it is, but this is a very, very unique bunch of guys. And we are just as close today as we were back then. when the samurai sword was coming at your face, was there part of you kind of going, "This is a terrible idea"?
No. What was funny was we would always the sort of hang out on the weekends and during hiatus was always at Charlie's house. Charlie lived about half a block from me. We lived very close together, so we would ride. We would ride every morning together to work. But he had these samurai swords at his house, and I was always playing with them because I just loved his swords. And then for a wrap gift for me when I left the show, they had this like professional sword maker make this sword for me, and it's gorgeous, and it's in the sort of entryway of my house, and it was very, very expensive, and so they gave that to me, and then it was maybe a month or so after I'd left the show, and you know, whenever an actor does a long stint on a show, they'll call it PPD, which is like post-production depression. It kind of comes to, it's that little bit of grieving that happens when you've like created a character and now you got to kind of put it to bed. So I was in that PPD period, and I just booked this other series, and they asked me for me to be clean shaven, and I was just like, I'm never clean shaven, but something's telling me to do this. And Charlie said, I think we gotta do this the right way. And I said, what do you mean? He said, why don't you come on over? And so we did this. It's sort of an old. It's a bushido. It's a samurai tradition, which is like when a samurai retires, or they still do it in the sumo community. When a sumo wrestler retires, he'll kneel, and people who have supported him throughout his career will come up and snip off a little bit of his top knot and take it. And so we kind of followed the old samurai tradition of letting this warrior go and starting a new chapter.
I just love that story. I think it's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm not going to hold everybody back much longer. So if people do have questions for Ryan, we actually have microphones on either side here. So if you hop up
there,
and because we won't be able to hear you otherwise. So if you don't mind, there's actually one right here and there's one there, and we tend to go one for one for one for one. All right. Well, actually, Paul is here, so we'll start with you.
Hey, Ryan. To me, you are Milligan.
Okay.
From the Mysterious Benedict Society. Okay. I just absolutely love that show. Gutted that it got cancelled on Disney.
Yeah, me too.
So can you talk a little bit about your experiences working on the show? I mean, Tony Hale, just what an incredible actor.
Yeah. That was one of the ones when I read the script, I was just bowled over. And then I met with the creators, and I said, well, what's the time? I mean, I had not read the young adult novels, but I'd read the script, and they just did this beautiful story that was really sort of honoring the interior emotional lives of children, that it wasn't sort of just talking down to children. It was really sort of honoring what it is to be a young adult sort of growing up, and I really took to that. And then I read some of Milligan's stuff, and I was just like, oh well, I can definitely play this. is this sort of protector of some very, very special children? But while shooting the show, I said to them, well, like, what's the tone are you guys going for? And they said, well, imagine Willy Wonka, but directed by Wes Anderson. I was like, well, sign me up, because we're on the same page aesthetically there. So it was a blast to shoot. Tony is a genius. He is phenomenal. He can do no wrong. I love that guy.
Were you happy with how season 2 finished?
Yeah, I was very happy with. I thought that the second season, the show was much better than the first. I felt like it flowed better. I felt like it was quicker. I felt like the performances from the kids really, because the kids really bonded by the end of the first season. Yeah, it was a shame that they decided not to pick it up. I thought it had a little bit more legs to it.
Yeah, absolutely loved it. Gutted.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, next question is over here.
So, hello from France.
Hello.
We were wondering did you ride a bike prior to filming Sons of Anarchy, and are you still maybe riding a bike today?
Still riding a bike today, yes. Before Sons of Anarchy, no. So actually, my my agent called me and said, "Do you want to get paid to learn to ride a motorcycle?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "All right, we'll send over the script." I said, "I need no script. If they're going to pay me to learn to ride a motorcycle, the answer is yes." So that's how I got the job for Sons of Anarchy. Was I said just send me the sides and I'll go in there and get it, and that's what I did. So that's how it all started. Was a want to learn to ride a motorcycle and to be paid to ride said motorcycle.
I love that. I actually always love Ron Perlman turning around and saying that he drives a Tesla, and he was like, "And I hate motorcycles."
Yeah, poor Ronnie. You know, they gave him this bike that had no, they're called risers, which is like, which separates the wheel from where the handlebars are, and the higher the bars, the easier it is essentially to balance the bike. And Ron had an old school bike that had no risers. So to have no risers on a bike and to be a taller person with a higher center of gravity, it doesn't bode well. So poor Ronnie, he crashed more times than anybody else. And it was not necessarily his fault, but I remember there was quite a few times that you'd be in the trailer and you'd hear like, Perlman down, and you'd come out and he'd be raspberried up inside. So, yeah.
Gosh, poor guy. Next question.
First start, Ryan Hurst, it's a pleasure to meet you, because I'm going to tell you one thing. I'm a huge fan of Sons of Anarchy and Mayans. I've watched Sons of Anarchy probably 20 times over and finished it 20 times over.
Wow.
You're probably one of my favourite characters in the Sons of Anarchy series, and it was a pleasure to watch, because you now, between Sons of Anarchy and Mayans and that kind of scene on FX, it's now turned me into a film and documentary student who's actually almost graduating from said
Beautiful.
course.
Congratulations.
Thanks. My question to you, Ryan Hurst, is how did you find being on the set of Sons of Anarchy is number one. And I enjoyed the brothership you had with Charlie Hunnam for a start. I'm not sure if you had a real brothership in real life. I hope you did. And who was your favourite castmate on said set?
Shooting the show was absolutely, it was the best. It was, to find a group of people that, it's kind of like, I mean, even though I've never been in a war, is a lot of the closeness that you find, the brotherhood that you find with a group of people who you have to sort of endure year after year after year together. The friendships that are made during that kind of last a lifetime. And Charlie and I are brothers to this day. We were texting this morning. Him and I are opening up a business together also, which I can't tell you about. But
you got in there before I was going to ask the question.
yeah, I can't. But we're the best of friends. One of my favorite people is Mark Boone Jr. He is a little Easter egg for everybody. I did a show called Bates Motel, where I played this very sort of eccentric character named Chick Hogan, and who dresses funny. He's very, very obscure sort of character. And I based that solely and completely, 100%. It was my impersonation of Mark Boone Jr. And I remember I did I think 3 seasons of Bates Motel, and after the first season, I told Boone that, and he watched it, and he goes, "Yeah, you did me pretty good." And I was like, "Okay, good." But Boone is one of the most kindest, gentlest, strangest human beings you'll ever meet, and I love him to death.
Thank you very much, Ray.
You got it.
Thank you. Next question. Actually, do you mind if we're going to go over this side, because we're trying to do one for one?
Yeah. Hi. Thanks for coming today.
Yeah.
I love you in Remember the Titans and SWAT even. What was your favourite character to portray over the years you've been acting?
It's always the next one. That's my token answer. It's always the next one. I don't look back and say I could have done this better, could have done that better, like this one better than that one. Our job as artists is to just continue to create. So that's what I always do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And back over here.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, brother.
On the Sun set, just sort of a light-hearted question, who were the biggest jokers on set?
There weren't a lot of jokers. I mean, it was there was just constant. There was just constant. It was like a group of bear cubs. It was just there was constant chaos. You know what I mean? But there wasn't a lot of sort of quote unquote practical jokes on the set. It was just nonsense across the board all the time.
Can I just add, who was your favorite character in Sons?
As a viewer?
Yeah, as a viewer.
My favorite character on that show was actually Chucky, the guy with no hands. Yeah. Is people go like, if you could have played a character, I would have been like Chucky, dude. I was like, he was phenomenal. You know, it's like a guy who couldn't stop whacking it, and had his own tagline, which was like, yes, I can accept that. I was just like, this guy is phenomenal.
Thanks, Ray.
Yeah.
Get that tagline on a T-shirt or something.
Yeah, I know, right?
Back over here.
Hi. I just want to ask. I'm sure maybe you enjoyed playing Thor and Ragnarok, so I don't really have like a serious question, but like, I want to know, like, can you do a Kratos impression?
A Kratos impression?
Yeah.
No, I can't. I can't.
Well,
but I do remember, I'll give you a nice story, was we first started doing a read-through of some of the script, and we're all sitting around, and Chris was there, and it was the first time that I was meeting Chris, and the first time that he was meeting me, and I start to do Thor's voice, and he goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. He goes, you trying to outlow me? Very, very cool guy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Love it. Back over here.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey,
as I mentioned at the table when I met you, I loved the movie Remember the Titans.
Yeah.
Every time the American football season ends, I go back and watch a lot of football movies. That's one of the ones I watch.
Yep.
And so you worked with a lot of people on that set. What was that like with such a huge cast, especially a lot of them have now gone on to have great careers?
Mm-hmm. It was so much fun. You know, I mean, again, probably with Sons, with Remember the Titans, with Saving Private Ryan. I did another movie called We Were Soldiers. Is with all of these things, it became this, you know, I don't know at what point it started to become the Hollywood norm, but is, you know, to get the entire cast together, you know, 3 months beforehand and put them through training. You know, so I've been to boot camp at Fort Benning like 4 times. It's just like I've done the 26-mile walk, I've done the night infiltration course, I've shot all the guns. Oh, we're gonna do football. We're gonna do 3 weeks of 2-a-day practices. Great. Is as I get older, I'm just like I am not doing this anymore. And it reminds me of this story, this famous story that I always liked so much, which was. Is Dustin Hoffman was shooting Marathon Man, a very famous movie with Laurence Olivier, and it's near the end of the movie where Dustin Hoffman's character is supposed to have been not having slept for like 48 hours or 72 hours or something like that, and he's supposed to be basically running away from the bad guy Nazis who were trying to, you know, torture him, and he has a scene coming up with Laurence Olivier, so. He stays up for 3 days, and they're waiting for him on set because he's running around the entire studio, getting totally and completely exhausted. And he kind of like shows up to the set, and he looks terrible, and he's out of breath, and Laurence Olivier is sitting there waiting, smoking a cigarette and drinking tea, and he says, "Dustin, darling, you can act tired." As I get older, I'm starting to side more and more with that, which is like, I don't need 8 weeks of kung fu training. Is shoot it from the back and use the kung fu guy. I'll be in my trailer.
I love it. It's like, if we have a stuntman on set,
Yeah.
use him.
Yeah.
Also, go back over here.
I'm a huge fan of Sons of Anarchy, and I love Opie in it. I was wondering what your favourite scene to shoot was in it.
My favorite scene to shoot. It was probably his death, his death scene. It was,
Spoiler alert.
yeah, I mean, is when I felt like the way that they portrayed his last sort of final shots, it was great. It was like an Italian opera. It was bloody. It had this sort of glorious sort of, gravitas to his death that I felt like was in perfect keeping with the character that, Kurt and I had sort of built together. So to see it kind of, end in a really, sort of like tip of the spear creative moment is, you don't get those a lot of the times. A lot of the times, like, a character will sort of fizzle out, or they'll stop writing for it, or whatever. But I felt like it was perfect. It ripped your heart out. It made you go, oh my God, no. And it was, it was like a Greek tragedy or like an Italian opera, and that was something I was very, very happy about.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, back over this side.
Hi, Ryan. I was curious, what's your favourite line from God of War?
Favorite line from God of War? I say when we're done. I like that one. I like it that he kind of keeps whipping them around. But there was so much. I'll tell you, one of the things that they don't tell you about when you do a video game is that near the end of, after you're done shooting and they've done all the motion capture, there's about 4 weeks where you come in and you, for 8 hours, are just screaming. Okay, but this time, like, you're lifting something 1,000 pounds. And you do this for 8 hours, and you have earned your money, sir. You think that it's fun for the first 5 minutes. You're like, oh, this is great. Yeah, 7 hours in, oh, it's rough. It's rough.
Thanks.
You got it, man.
All right, I think we've got time for just 2 more questions, I'm afraid, folks. We'll go one here and one there. So start over here.
Hi, Ryan. You said earlier that you were a movie nerd, and I was just wondering if there's one particular movie you think everybody should watch.
Ooh. Oh, wow, that's a great question. One movie that everybody should watch. Everybody. So then it's going to have to be something obscure. There's a little tiny movie. It was my grandmother's favorite movie, and it's a short film. It's a French film, and it's called The Red Balloon, and it's just about this little boy who comes across this red balloon that kind of comes to life. If you watch it now, it was made in the late 50s, early 60s. It's a silent picture that just has music to it, and the color of the red balloon, kind of a little bit like Schindler's List, but is the red balloon. It's a beautiful little piece about sort of. I mean, I won't tell you what it's about, but it's a beautiful little work of art.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And our final question.
Hi, Ryan. How's it going?
Hey, brother.
This relates back to a question earlier on. I'm the guy that asked Ron Perlman, what does he ride? And he ripped me a new one.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking you looked familiar.
As soon as you said it, I busted out laughing. I goes, yeah, that's me.
Yep.
So it's like, firstly, do you ever get a chance to ride out much? And what bikes do you have?
I just have one right now, but I'm getting one of the new Harley Pan Ams because I test drove one and they're fantastic. But besides that, I have a 2010 Fat Boy with these like 20-inch apes on it. It's all blacked out and all that.
That's sweet. And do you ever get a chance to ride out much at all?
Oh yeah, at home, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks very much.
All right, brother.
Well, listen, everybody, I'm sure you'll be with me to say good luck on March 30th with the BAFTA Games Awards.
Thank you so much.
And for now, Ryan Hurst.
Thank you, everybody.